By the way, speaking of theories, I'm going to disappoint you, Preston Sensei. I'm going to disappoint you.
Uh-oh.
We discussed this briefly a while ago, but I'm going to disappoint you. So when we did the collaboration with Trey, the Explainer, for those of you who don't know, we recently did a collaboration with YouTuber Trey the Explainer. It's on Preston's channel. Definitely check it out. I'll leave a link in the description below. Um, I like how you, when we started off, you quizzed him on who wrote the pink letter. And who did he say? Stannis or Mance?
He thought Stannis, yeah.
Stannis, okay. And then you turned to me and you were like, and who do you think wrote it, Carmine? Joe Rogan? Ah, you're a funny guy. You're a funny guy. But someone actually did ask me a while ago at my server, like, wait, I don't think you've ever discussed the pink letter stuff. And for those of you who don't know, I'm kind of not anti-theory, but I'm not really someone who does theories. I leave that to, people like
Yes, yes.
Preston.
I remember one of your first videos was, except for like super obvious ones, like R plus, you said like R plus L equals J, and the Hound is the Gravedigger. Like those are the two that you maybe you said like Frey pies, like super obvious ones. You were not into theories.
I'm
Yeah.
not into theory, which is weird because like, you're the Mac Daddy of theories and I'm not I'm just here. I read the material and I'm like I enjoy it and I go home and I sleep. You obsess over it. There's got to be more to it. So I'm going to disappoint you here and say that I think it was Ramsay who wrote the pink letter all along. And I'll tell you why. I
Okay.
think it's Ramsay being Ramsay. I think it's him being overconfident or the right amount of confident because Ramsay probably wrote it right before he went into battle, if he's going to go into battle against Stannis. And he wrote it right before and he sent it off. And he's assuming by the time the letter gets to Jon that the battle will be over. So
Yeah.
it's a weird like time thing going on here. I think the last Jon chapter in Dance takes place after the Battle of Weiss. And once again,
Mm.
Ramsay knows that the Southern forces, there's no way they're going to be able to survive the onslaught of winter as it's arriving. And he's correct. They're already like losing a lot of people to starvation or just people falling through the ice and so on and so forth. And even though they're at that, what, Crofter's Village?
Hmm.
And they fished it bone dry and all that stuff. Even though they're hanging on there, I Ramsay is correct in that they can't survive for too long, and maybe he's going out into battle, or maybe he's sending one of the Frey boys. Regardless, I think it's true that Stannis has fallen, and it's just a whole time thing. It's just Ramsay. He sent the letter before the battle began because he realizes that by the time the letter gets to Jon Snow, everything will be said and done.
Mm. Mm.
You might know this. Did George want to put the Battle of Ice in Dance and chose not to because it was too crowded already?
He did. He no, he wanted to put, I mean, originally he wanted to yes, have, I don't know if he had finished all of the Battle of Ice chapters, but he had told his publisher like, "Oh, I'd like to, this is where I want the story to end. I'd like to end, I don't want to end things on a cliffhanger. I want to have the Battle of Ice and the Battle of Fire and then end the story." But the book was getting long
Mm-hmm.
and he was very late on his deadline, and so they kind of said, "Look, like, can you just cut it off?" Because one, like, there's certain number of pages that you're allowed before, like spine breaking and things like this. So they're like, you're already past your page count and you're past your deadline by a lot. Like, can you cut it? And so he stopped writing at that point and was like, I'm done. And he had extra chapters. All of the sample chapters are chapters that he had finished, for A Dance with Dragons. And so he was just like, okay, here's the end of the book, and he made this and that's why it's very much a cliffhanger. Um,
There you go. There you go.
Now so here's even though I'm a big theory guy, and the thing is with the theories is you go with what makes most sense
Mm-hmm.
with the text. But let's be honest, there's author error and things like this. So what the text says is not always going to be 100% correct. Now, I will also say that, like, I don't necessarily think George knows the answer to these questions. I think George writes stuff ambiguously in case he wants to go either way. Like he doesn't want to write himself into a corner. So I think when people look at the Pink Letter and say the Quentin situation, uh, I'm not the only one where I read, A Dance with Dragons and was like, there's just something off about that letter, or there's something off about the Quentin situation. I looked this up and everybody else is like, this doesn't seem right. Why does it feel wrong? And it feels wrong because there's all these little contradictions and fishy things there that I think that George put in intentionally to make the situation ambiguous, because he wasn't sure if he wanted Quentin to be alive or Quentin to be dead. He wasn't sure if he wanted the Pink Letter to be from Ramsay or from Theon or from Mance or from Stannis. Like, he didn't know the answer to these questions. He just and so he kind of writes little elements here and there, like as if you're writing a mystery book. You're going to have, and then the things that don't fit will be red herrings in retrospect. It doesn't matter. So when you say, like, I think that Ramsay wrote the Pink Letter, it's not that I can say to you, like, no, that's wrong. I think that that's one of the possibilities that George thought about when he put forth that letter. And it'll all depend on how when he's writing and what he feels like on what he's going to pursue. So, I don't think that, like, Ramsay is necessarily a horrible guess. Now, I don't think that the text actually supports Ramsay, but like I say, that, like, not the text isn't going to support everything. Like, a lot of things aren't going to make sense because authors make mistakes, and things aren't perfect,
Realistically,
So,
we might not even get the answer to who really wrote the letter, and it'll just be Ramsay by default, even if it wasn't him
right.
as the original
Yeah.
intent. Because having, like, Mance or what were your candidates? Stannis, Mance, and Tormund, or
No,
Theon?
I'd say Stannis, Mance, and Theon would be the top ones. I would say that the top three candidates in my mind are Mance, Stannis, and Ramsay. And then I would say that, like, maybe people throw around, like, Theon. People throw around, um, uh, like, Lady Dustin. Like,
That's a new one. I swear
yeah,
in your video you said Tormund, and I was wondering, like, does Tormund even know how
no,
to
it could,
read?
like, no. There's some ideas that people did stuff at the wall, that the letter was altered at the wall by by Clytus, or there's ideas that the crow's food has not crow's food Horsebane. He's got Maester experience, so perhaps he did something. These are very, very minor ones.
Hmm.
But I would say that, like, the big three are Stannis, Mance, and Ramsay. I would say that 99% of people are in those camps.
Right.
And then you've got these kind of, like, minor ones, like maybe it was Asha, maybe it was Theon, maybe it was Lady Dustin, maybe it was Horace Bane Umber, maybe it was Clytus at the wall. Like, you've got all of these, like, little things, but maybe it was Melisandre.
Melisandre is
But
that one I could possibly believe, but no, it's like I said. At the end of the day, I don't think we'll get the answer because the story just seems so crowded enough as it is. And
yeah,
if George had more time, and not to be a jerk, but a younger guy, he probably would have gone into detail on
yeah.
this. But it really does feel like George really wants to go out and enjoy his fame and doesn't want to spend time writing the main story anymore. That's really what it feels like. So
Well, I think if you look at the comparison of who sent the Catspaw mystery, it took George at minimum 2 books to get to the point of who telling us who did the Catspaw, and his explanation makes so little sense that
yeah,
we still putting our hopes out for something else, for something that makes more sense. And so I think that when he wrote that original chapter, he didn't fucking know who
he
sent
just
the
needed this
Catspaw.
thing to happen to cause mistrust between the Starks and the Lannisters.
Right. And then he kind of, like, is trying to, he either, didn't know what to do, so he just threw a bunch of shit in there, which is, again, like, purposely ambiguous and off and doesn't make any sense. Like Tyrion coming to the conclusion that Joffrey did it based on, a dog to kill a wolf, even though if you go back, Joffrey doesn't say a dog to kill a wolf. He says a dog to kill a dog, meaning a completely different set of things. So he's using completely bad logic to come to that conclusion. Like, and, George must have been aware of that, but, it's there. So I don't know. Did Joffrey send the Catspaw? It's a really bad answer. But maybe because the author error and author just does weird stuff. But it's if the series ends and we never find out the answer, I guess we have to assume it was Joffrey. But it's such a bad answer that makes no sense.
Who's in the running for the Catspaw assassin? Is it just Bran, time traveling Bran?
Well, there's puppet masters above people, but you're talking like a physical human being ordering it on the ground. I think people think either Mance or Littlefinger.
Either Littlefinger, yeah. I thought it was going to be time traveling Bran at one point because that's how things need to. Bran needs to make sure he falls every time in every timeline.
Yeah, it's a little too convenient that at this moment where all of these powers are working for Lannister and Stark to be at each other's throats, that Joffrey, who has nothing to do with that, would cause that. Like Mance wants the Starks and the Lannisters to be at each other's throats because he wants to invade.
Right.
And Littlefinger wants the Starks and the Lannisters to be at each other's throats so he can like use chaos as the ladder and all of that. So you can make these other arguments for who it helps, and then for it to be Joffrey is just so fucking random and nothing makes sense about it. But was George thinking about it? I don't know.
Maybe he just wanted to get it out of the way to focus on other things because that was one of those glaring plot points left unresolved.
Right, and this is very different from say who poisoned Jon Arryn, which makes complete sense from the beginning. Is in every way. Like introduced in the very first, not the very first. No, I guess is it the first edited chapter where he goes down into the crypts with Robert, and they start talking about they start talking about Sweet Robin, and you're like from the beginning, he definitely knew who poisoned Jon Arryn. Like that was definitely, and no one questions like that situation because it makes so much sense, like, oh yeah, no, right from the beginning he told us, like, they want to foster Sweet Robin, and all of a sudden Jon Arryn's killed. Like, oh, I guess that makes sense. It was the mother who didn't want her child taken away from her. Like,
were one of the candidates supposedly it was either Stannis or Tywin that they wanted to foster Sweet Robin to?
Yeah, one of the two, yeah. Stannis or so Jon Arryn wanted to send him off to Stannis, but Robert wanted to send him off to, because Cersei wanted it. He wanted to send Sweet Robin off to Tywin. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was a big contentious issue, and they talk about this contentious issue throughout a Game of Thrones. It's kind of, at the time you're like, why are they talking about the fostering of Sweet Robin so much? But it comes around and makes sense, and then these other things don't make sense.